Yep.
Cool.
If you're new to the podcast, I should let you know that it isn't usually a video show. It's mostly an audio podcast. And this week I had MKBHD on, so obviously I had to do something special. So I'm releasing this video as well. It's just something I do for special occasions. I also did one with Jonathan Morrison, but you gotta know that this YouTube version is trimmed way down. We cut out a lot of stuff that is all in the audio only version of the podcast. There's some great moments in this, but for the full conversation, including comparing the Pixel 3 to the iPhone XS, as well as the new iPad Pro, you're gonna have to go to your podcast app of choice and search for the Stalman podcast. I hope you enjoy. Do you listen to any podcasts? I have this big thing I think about a lot, that like the podcast world and the YouTube world in technology anyway, don't like live together a lot. Like they kind of like do their own things. Are you into podcasts?
A little bit more recently, actually. So I hadn't listened to pretty much any podcasts until this year. And then this year I started finding like 2 or 3 like pretty regular ones. My favorite right now is the Reply All podcast. I'm sure most people have heard of it.
Sure.
And then there's a couple around it. There's some sports ones, but generally, yeah, it's like a commute to work. It's better. It's like replacing when I'd usually listen to music when driving, basically.
The worst thing that happened to me with that is now I forget to listen to music. Like I have so few new songs that I like because podcasts are long. You know, it's like an hour or at least half an hour. Then all of a sudden, that's 5 good songs you didn't listen to in that time.
Yeah, I got a pretty good rotation of like songs I like to listen to for the most part for driving and stuff like that. But yeah, podcasts have lately replaced that.
Well, and a thing that I always miss since I do both. Whenever I do YouTube videos, I'm always missing the time. I feel like, wow, 10 minutes is not very long. But like since that's like the whole world that you've done, do you feel like you're leaving much out of a video, or can you usually get everything that you actually wanted to say into those?
So I've thought about that a lot lately. Is like something we work on is information density and trying specifically to fit as much information in as short of a time as possible in sort of a useful, structured way. And that's why I like have to write things down and sort of reorder them and shuffle them, and hopefully I can compress it down. But we also have this thing we do at the studio where we'll have pretty much the whole shot list and like how long, the A-roll and everything talking. And then all of us will guess how long we think the video is going to be. And we're all usually under the actual number. It usually ends up being longer, but when you watch the video, it kind of doesn't feel like an immense, like long time when you're watching it. So like a 6-minute video kind of feels kind of short at this point.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I feel like normal is like 8 to 10 is kind of what I'm starting to get used to. That's usually what I'm clicking on or what I'm releasing.
Yeah. And even like for a review, that might seem kind of short. Like a lot of the flagship videos on my channel are review videos of stuff, and like a 9-minute review would feel kind of short, I think. And then like a 15-minute review feels normal.
Well, and then for me, when I'm like excited about the next phone that's coming out and I want to know everything just for myself and I'm like looking for my news, I like that in podcast worlds, like 1 hour is pretty short.
Yeah.
Like there's the talk show with John Gruber. It's like often like a 2.5 to 3 hour show. And I'm like, give me more. But
yeah.
I don't know. That's why I love having both of them exist. But the thing is, like, when I'm I also do photography as part of my job. So when I'm editing photos, I can listen to podcasts. That gives me a lot of time to take in audio content. Then when I edit a video, I gotta completely focus. So.
That's the thing. Yeah. The only time I get to listen to stuff is while I'm like coloring and maybe a little bit of like general like laying down shots. But for the most part, I have to be listening to my own voice. But yeah, I think I probably could listen to podcasts while editing a little too.
Like, what are you excited about in 2018? Like in the general direction of where things are going, what are some of the bigger themes that you're seeing that have been really fun and looking good in the future?
Yeah, one of my favorites, especially lately, and I've talked about smartphone cameras before and how much I like them, but specifically computational photography. It's no longer possible to ignore how important software is to the camera experience, especially in a smartphone. And I think a little while ago, you could kind of just assume like a lot of these cameras are pretty similar. You get what you see at first glance. You take a photo, you see it. It is what you see is what you get, and it's over. Um, a lot of smartphone cameras now, you take a photo and there's some processing involved. There's some HDR that you have to wait for. There's more going on. Portrait mode, night sight, especially, is something I've been trying a lot more with all these night modes for low light. There's just a lot of interesting things happening. I don't know how loud that construction noise is,
No, it's fine.
but a lot of cool software processing things happening in smartphones that are actually interesting enough that it's sort of distracting me from like the photography I usually fall back on, which is a real camera. So I'm just kind of taking a lot more photos with my phone now.
Well, yeah, that's actually one thing I was wondering. When you do pick up a real stills camera, like you talk a lot about your reds and stuff, but for stills, what do you like? I've seen your Hasselblad kick around a few times.
Yeah, this is my baby, and it's not a good. I have to use the right words. It's not necessarily a good everyday camera. It's a really fun photographer's camera in that like you have a shot in mind and you take a second, you pause, and you think about like framing and the composition, as opposed to just like picking up the camera, autofocus, fire, and you got the shot. Like it's not that kind of camera. So that's why I like it. But for those like pick up and shoot, like I'm always back to my phone for that kind of thing.
It like slows you down in a good way. Like you have to take a minute and think, is this worth creating 100 megabytes of your data? Because that's for anybody listening, that's the X1D that you're just looking at. And I was actually shooting with that yesterday. And I was doing it in the way that felt the best, like what it's made for, of like wandering around, because we're traveling, we're in New York, and just like kind of travel tourist photos. Like this moment looks beautiful to me. It's not an important shot. Like it's not for anybody.
Yeah.
And I take it. And then I know that what I'm bringing home is this huge file with infinite color depth. There's never a concern about how big I can print it. And I want to see these worlds come together, because now what started to happen is when I'm taking the photo on my, especially on my iPhone, like the XS is what I've used the most lately. The instant preview, since it's doing a lot of that HDR on the fly, immediately before I've taken the photo, it looks so much better than the much more expensive cameras. And I know those sensors are better. I know they can capture more data. They can do more with it in the long run. But like I did some tests recently where I was looking at what is the maximum dynamic range you can extract if you just sort of take a normal exposure, so that the image looks like correct.
Yeah.
And you're with my Canon anyway, actually, and also the Sony, I wasn't able to recover as much in the highlights as what the HDR is doing on the cell phones.
Yeah.
And so like, I know it is a better sensor, but unless we get that kind of processing, it's never going to.
Yeah, the multi-frame. And I thought about, so not only that, like all the multi-frame HDR and all those sorts of things that actually give it like literally better dynamic range, but also like the quick on the fly, like sort of editing and sharing experience. Like I kind of, so the Samsung Galaxy camera, I think is what it's called, came to mind, but I was kind of just picturing in my mind, like the dream camera today would be like an X1D, or maybe just like a 1DX or something, like a really good sensor with, and then put like a smartphone, like an iPhone XS or a Pixel on the back, where I can then edit, and I have LTE, and I can just like, toss it in Lightroom for a couple quick things and then share that. Like that image would be fun. But
for sure.
Yeah, that experience is not quite what we have yet.
Well, and I got a lot of pushback from, like on the video that I did talking about this, I got a lot of pushback from, like professional photographers that love their expensive camera that they invested a lot in. They spent a lot of research buying it, and they know that the hardware is better, but you can't deny all the things you're just talking about, like that ease of posting, and that, I think there can be a bit of a reputation that it's like, there's like professional photographers in air quotes is like, you can do a lot of things to make a living taking photos, or they can just be really important to you. And sometimes having that, like getting the best photo possible with the minimum effort is really, really important. Sometimes that is the priority, And so like, I would love to see things like, I don't even know how they could do it. Like when you take a photo with that 1DX or X1D, you notice the time it takes to have all of those pixels even just read out to the, like put through the buffer. There's like a perceptible time where you're waiting for it. And I couldn't imagine it doing like what the iPhone's doing, like 60 frames a second basically, and capturing what, like a dozen of those or something. And same with the Pixel.
Yeah, you'd end up having to think a lot more about processing power in these cameras. And like we focus so much on the neural engine and the image processing pipeline and the A12X and all that stuff, but like we don't really think about that as much in the 5D. I mean, we do want to a fast multi-frame. A lot of people do sports photography, and you want it to be able to shoot quickly. But beyond that, it just kind of ends at that sort of speed. So having all those algorithms that are running and all the computational photography would require a lot of additional processing power that I guess they just don't really focus on yet, so we don't have it.
So one thing I've always wondered, I mean, I don't get any indication that you would, but do you ever think about doing any other kind of filmmaking with the skills that you're acquiring here? Like, obviously, you know how to make things look good, you know how to shoot, you know composition. Do you ever imagine a day like 10 years from now where you like make a short or, I don't know, do something more traditional filmmaking?
Yeah. Yes, that is something I think about, especially because, taking, this equipment everywhere and these cameras, and just shooting things that aren't my normal topic or the normal subject just for fun. That like gets the gears turning, and that's what has me thinking about like shooting like documentary style or like a more traditional short or something like that. But I think just in this time, like we're so busy with all the tech that's coming out now, it's been a pretty hard focus.
Well, it's almost like your car videos have started giving you a bit of that opportunity. Like that's when you can kind of open up a little and
it's exciting to have like other things I'm interested in shooting videos about. Like there's tech obviously, and like especially right now, like 90% of it is smartphones, so it just kind of seems redundant to just keep making a phone video. But yeah, like the car videos are really exciting, and especially when that's something we've learned a lot from, because we've only done like 3 car videos total, but the subject you're shooting is so much bigger and the environment you're shooting in is so much more vast and dynamic and interesting that it's a completely different video. So
yeah, try controlling that lighting when it's on a on a whole car and then a whole street.
Yeah, it's much more of a challenge than just a little fun here in the studio.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm always like I'm so impressed with people like like Casey Neistat being able to put out beautiful stuff often. Like I think people underestimate how challenging it is to make something look really good quickly and regularly. It's one thing to like really take your time. Like I feel like it's kind of cheating when I take a week to make a video compared to that some people are able to like put it out in 24 hours. How long is kind of your normal turnaround on most of these videos?
Yeah, so I mean, if you go from like beginning to end of like from pre-production and like writing and like actually evaluating a product all the way till when it's published, you could say it's anywhere from 5 to 10 days, depends on what the product is. But the actual production itself is usually a 1 or 2 day thing. 1 or 2 days of shooting and then like however many hours it takes to edit everything. But yeah, again, it depends pretty hard on what video it is. If it's just a talking head of like me ranting to the camera about something, that's only like a 10-hour day and the whole thing is done. Yeah. But if it's a whole review with all these different shots and explanatory pieces and different illustrations of things, like that whole video might take like 4 or 5 days.
What's the longest you've gone? Like how long have you sunk into one video?
Oh, good question. It would probably be the car stuff. So Acura gave me the NSX for a week. And between like driving the car, taking it to the track, getting all the drone shots, getting all the interior of the car shots, getting all the driving shots, getting all the rolling shots, and actually evaluating the car and then putting it all together in an order that made sense, like all of that was probably about 9 or 10 days, something like that. That might be the longest I've recently spent on a video.
Well, I think that's what most people don't get that haven't made the videos too, is like, not only does it take all that time to like basically make a little movie, but you have to spend a moment to think about the thing you're talking about too. Like you actually have to spend some time using it and just in your own head, like how do I feel about it?
Yeah. And that's like maybe the most underrated part of the video. You could have the most, I've seen some really, really, really gorgeous videos that don't say anything, And I really feel that when it's lacking. So I do spend obviously a lot of time trying to make sure we're actually making a useful video.
I was kicking myself recently because I did a Pixel 3 video where I just hadn't spent much time with it. Like I didn't buy one, so I was using a friend's. And then after I used it, I'm like, you know what? I didn't test that camera properly at all. Like I didn't do it justice. I just like kind of worried about like, oh, I'll make the video pretty. And I'm absolutely not going to make that mistake again. Like it sucks when you feel like you're not delivering any serious information because, you know, it's pretty easy to just get the specs. It's pretty easy to know like what the thing is. So usually I'm looking for somebody's unique perspective. And that's like the people that I like the most. I know what they're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
Actually, that reminded me of like a general topic. I just kind of had some notes of things I wanted to hit of like, I heard you mention it once and I think about it all the time. So I want to see if we're on a similar page. People get super stressed out about bias in the comments. They're like, I mean, that's like, which is one of the words that shows up the most in comments is like, I either love this person because they're unbiased or I hate them because they're super biased. And my view on it is that we are all biased. Like if you think you're watching anybody's opinion that is unbiased, you're just mistaken. They're just really good at masking it. Because we have preferences, you know, like maybe it's like I value the camera on the phone more than battery life, or, you know, everybody's got their priority list. So the way I always think about it is like, you got to find the person that shares those priorities with you. And then hopefully, and then that's who you come back to because you're like, oh, I know what you do and don't like. It's similar in this way, different in that way.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I think I've said something along those lines before. Like, yes, everyone has a bias, whether you think they do or not. But that's fine because that can be useful for calibrating yourself to knowing once you've watched a couple of videos and heard what people have said, like what they tend to like and don't like and what they prioritize. So I'm pretty clear about that, I think. When I'm reviewing something or when I'm talking about something I like, I'll tell you why I like it. And if I don't like something, I'll tell you why I don't like it. And any review that comes with anything they like or don't like, that right off the bat is a bias because an unbiased review is just a spec sheet, basically. So yeah, you kind of have to, you go with the flow and you understand that everyone has some sort of a perspective they're coming from.
What's the deal with like, why do people get so worked up about it? Like, there's, just so much anger about brands and stuff, and I can't.
You know how I think about it?
Relate to it at all. It's so strange to me.
Okay, so I kind of think about it like sports teams. It can be extremely irrational how much you like a sports team. And another thing is you probably only really like that team because you just got dropped in there, like you're in a certain area or whatever.
Yeah, your parents liked it.
Yeah, your parents, your first phone was this phone or whatever, so now you're super into this. You're on this team. Anytime anyone, justified or not, takes a shot at your favorite team, whether they're right or not, it just doesn't like feel good. You kind of want to just stick up for your own team. So if someone doesn't like something that you like, it kind of feels like they're not on your team in a way. And you kind of have to like strike back. That's just kind of how I've like observed the whole, the fanboy section of the internet. That's just kind of how they act as like sports team fans. Yeah. So I guess I don't blame them.
I mean, maybe it's because I don't watch sports. That's why I'm like, I can't relate to this. It's so weird to me.
Yeah. No, but it can get like pretty like more heated than you would think, but it's I guess that's the way I understand it.
Well, and it's something that I'm hoping to see YouTube as a community moved more towards what I think of as like YouTube for grownups. You know how they have like the YouTube kids section?
Yeah.
Like that's where all the like brand fighting can go to me is like, if you're under 18, I remember feeling like that. Like just, I'd kind of be a dick about the bands that I like or whatever, like things you're into. And I get it when you're young, but like, I like that there are people that are giving this more mature voice to YouTube. And you're absolutely part of it, where it's not about stunts and pranks and being as loud as possible. It's just like, let's just have like a real conversation. And I mean, it's cool because you're still a young guy and you're one of the more mature voices out there. But yeah, it's just something that I don't want YouTube to be thought of as only a place for children. Like you're only here because you're a young person and old people don't watch YouTube because like I'll be an old person soon. I'll probably still be watching it.
Yeah, that's kind of, I guess there's that's just the perception of YouTube. Like if you search hard enough, you can find pretty much anything on YouTube. So if you go into, let's say you're looking for tech on YouTube and you kind of don't really expect anything to be taken too seriously, then you can pretty easily find stuff to not take seriously, and then all your suspicions are confirmed and you'll just leave. So yeah, I think it helps to be able to find what you're actually looking for as far as like more mature content, or maybe you're just trying to find people talking about a very specific niche or something like that. If you look hard enough, you probably will find it. So yeah, it's just kind of the upside and the downside is you're just kind of mixed in with this whole melting pot of all these different styles, and hopefully you can stand out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that people shouldn't get confused that YouTube is just one thing. There's just so many people out there, and you can kind of like find the community that you want. But I mean, I found that it took me a while because I'm about I don't know, I don't remember how old you are, but I'm about more than 10 years older than you. And there's this generational gap where I think older people never thought of YouTube as like a social network, and younger people treated it that way a lot more. Like they'd become a fan, like they'd follow somebody and engage with them on a regular basis and kind of get into them as a personality. And anytime I talk to older people, it's not like that at all. It's like, I need to know how to repair my sink. So that's when I go and Google a how-to video, or I'm buying a new phone and I look for it then. But I think somehow the different ages kind of chose how they look at it. And that's going to be shrinking, right? I mean, as we all kind of age into this being a more mature community, we'll all I think everybody will see it in a little bit more the same way.
It's pretty new. Like I was just in Hollywood, but like the whole, like the demographic of different types of media are pretty obvious. Like people from 40 to 60 aren't pouring hundreds of hours into YouTube every week. They're trying to get like their media elsewhere. They're reading newspapers, they're watching TV. It's different. So I think with all these younger generations coming up and not necessarily watching a lot of TV or reading a lot of newspapers and things like that, they turn to the more accessible on-demand stuff, which is YouTube videos and on-demand content. And that's just kind of the way it's ended up. Not to say that one is better than the other. You can clearly be into one or the other. So
do you have anything else that you're just playing with or enjoying lately? Any cool gear that I don't know about?
I mean, iPad Pro is my newest toy, so I'm really into it. The review of it is coming up, but I think a lot of the thoughts I've echoed here will be present in that video. Where like, I'm curious what you think of the design, because it's kind of a big difference from previous iPads.
I love it because it's iPhone 5 to me. Which
okay, yeah.
I've always thought it was my favorite phone design. Like I loved the iPhone 5.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the like renders of what people imagined a future iPad would look like unnecessarily thin and perfectly square, but kind of like a stencil sketch of like, yeah, maybe we can make it 6mm thin, whatever, and totally flat. Like that's what it is now. I really like it. I think the design is pretty interesting, but I'm a fan just holding it, using it. Yeah. I'm just happy when I'm using an iPad Pro.
I was really annoyed at the lack of headphone. I mean, every time a headphone jack disappears, I'm a little sadder.
It's kind of like notches, where I've used a phone with a notch and I've used a phone without a headphone jack for so long that I got my wireless headphones, I got my wireless accessories, and now I'm living the wireless life and I'm fine without a headphone jack. Yeah. So it kind of looks weird. This goes back to like bias, where like, so a new company will come along with a new product and they'll get rid of the headphone jack and everyone's up in arms about it, but I already made that switch over, so I'm like not fuming with anger like I should be, like, you know. So yeah, I come from a place where the iPad not having a headphone jack is literally no problem for me. I didn't use one for the last like year, but for a lot of professionals, like an iPad Pro, a professional tablet shouldn't have a headphone jack. But
that's when I would start fuming, is if my laptops or my desktops start losing it. Like I mean, I'm using it right now. I'm plugged in.
Yeah. So on my desktop, let me keep that. Like, there's clearly enough space for it, and it's commonly used. Honestly, and this might be weird to say, I don't think I'd miss it on my laptop either. I don't edit on my laptop, so there's like no reason left. I was just on a plane with my MacBook Pro for a while, wireless headphones, just because that's what I'm on now.
But do you not, so you don't edit on laptop, do you not edit on the go at all? I mean, definitely when you're at keynotes and stuff, you
As
get
of
stuff
late,
done.
I've been bringing an iMac Pro with me. And for a while, yes, I was editing on a 15-inch MacBook Pro. I would always get, whenever they updated it, the newest, highest end, absolute maxed out version. And so it would be like, like an Apple event I would go to, and I'd bring in all these R3Ds, and I'd shoot at the highest possible compression ratio, and I'd try to make it as easy on the computer as possible, but I'm still shooting raw. And I could edit, and I could get through it, but once I hit render, that transcoding process was many hours long.
Right.
And so it was like hit render, go to sleep, wake up, hope it's done rendering by then. If not, eat breakfast, wait for it. It's done, upload that. And it'd be like, by that time, it's like 15 hours later, like, this could have been done a while ago. And I'd get the newest, fastest MacBook Pro, and it would be, just like Apple says, 10% faster. But 10% faster on a 6-hour export is now 5 hours and 25 minutes. Like, it's not really making a big difference for me. So yes, lately I did start bringing iMac Pro, or at least the last Apple event I brought iMac Pro, and I exported and created 2 videos in one night before going to sleep, and that's not something I would have been able to do otherwise.
Yeah.
So I no longer edit on the go with MacBook Pro. If I'm shooting red, I am editing on a desktop.
Yeah, that's kind of insane. I would love to see the acceleration of external GPUs pick up to the point where, like, right now it looks like Final Cut doesn't reach out to them. So like that doesn't quite seem like an option yet, where you could bring an enclosure and
trust me, I'm constantly looking for ways to not have to bring a 45-pound, 70-pound Pelican case with me on the plane. So yes, I cross my fingers for Final Cut updates every day, and I look at what external GPUs are doing. But as of right now, it's 5 hours versus 25 minutes, and the choice is clear for me.
Wait, it's over? I thought there was going to be oh wait, all the rest of it is in the audio version. Okay, so now's the time that you go to your podcast player and you subscribe to the Stalman podcast, where there's way more. We talk about phones and iPads and get into more of the new technical stuff. To be honest, we lost both of our video feeds at certain moments, so I didn't even choose all the stuff that got cut out of this. It's just shorter because it had to be. There's a link in the description below to hear the full conversation, and I'd love to know who you guys think I should talk to next. But don't tell me, go tell your favorite YouTubers that they should be on the Stalman podcast. Thanks for watching, guys.
I will stop recording audio and